even the bit of information with like Tower Records, right? Like that was fucking amazing, right? Knowing that, they approached them to like just play on
to
their
do a
rooftop.
Beatles style playing on the roof show, when then they were going to basically give that album front and center in every Tower Records around the world. And the band said, nah, that's too fucking corporate, because we're Sam the Record Man people here. And,
Yeah.
because Sam the Record Man's a big Canadian chain, or was a big Canadian chain.
Yeah, and they're just like, well, and then Sam the Record Man had that, and then they like kind of bring that too, where like they have their own like magazine or whatever, and they're just bashing the hip without even realizing that
That
they
the hip is
turned it.
basically giving them a fucking reach around.
Yeah. Well, we got a first for this podcast, so thank you, Toro Group and Prime Video. We're talking shows. We're talking a documentary, The Tragically Hip, No Dress Rehearsal, written and directed by Mike Downie. Insert random Tragically Hip verse lyric here.
You mean something like, I'm tragically hip. Come on, just let's go. Something like that? Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of How'd You Like That Movie? We are actually doing something very special. As you know, we're primarily a movie or film podcast, but when Prime Video gives you the opportunity to cover the Tragically Hip, No Dress Rehearsal docu-series that just premiered at TIFF, by the time you've heard this, you say yes. So, Scott, New Orleans is sinking band. I don't want to swim. Let's get into the hip. Let's do it right now. Let's do it fully, completely.
Nice.
Listen, I think we gotta first start just like with a little script, because you keep on fucking taking my shit now, and I'm not liking this. I liked it better when I was taking your shit, but like now, like fuck yeah. But yeah, so if you're not at TIFF today,
You blew it.
September 5th, this will release on Prime on September 20th, and let me tell you, there's this docuseries, I think, is one of the best ones I've seen in a very, very long time, because it completed everything. It was like, it has all the fucking feels. Like, you laugh, you cry, you cheer, you're fucking sad. You go through a roller coaster of emotion, and it just encompasses like the hip is Canada. You got maple syrup, you got Tim Hortons, and then you got the hip, right? And I would put the hip probably above the other two, with maple syrup a close second. But yeah, like this was so fucking well done, and I without even watching the trailer or anything, I was expecting this was just going to be like a docu-series on that last tour, but it's not. It takes you from the genesis, the birth, and the explosion of the hip, and it's a fucking wild ride, but also super fucking enjoy it. Like, you will be entertained.
And this is it where you insert, are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Yes, you were. So just for a bit of coverage for those of you that are not Canadian, the fact that Scott was able to just like jump into this, doesn't even have to call the band The Tragically Hip. They are known to Canadians so well that shorthand of The Hip, there's only one band that's The Hip. It is The Tragically Hip. They are the band that is Canada. Like, yeah, there's bigger bands like Rush or Nickelback, Justin Bieber, The Weeknd, Drake, like all those people come from Canada. But the hip is Canada. They told Canada who they were. They were Canadians talking to Canadians about Canada. And if you're from a specific generation, there's no part of your life that doesn't have some hip single soundtrack to them. So this is a band that started in a little town called Kingston, Ontario. And they went on in about 1984. And again, there are other, podcasts and documentaries and docu-series that are going to cover the hip. We are specifically going to be talking about No Dress Rehearsal, the recent docu-series. But again, yeah, hip started in 84. And they basically went till 2017 officially because their frontman, Gord Downie, died in 2016, I believe. And so, yeah, this is, if you don't know the hip, go Google the Tragically Hip, go listen to a bunch of their singles, then come back, finish this, and then definitely watch this docu-series that comes out on Prime Video the 20th of September. So Scott, let's just go back and forth, because I mean, it's 4 parts, roughly an hour each. So you got about 4+ hours of running time, directed by Gord's brother, which I thought was, super cool. Mike Downie also did the music video for Poets, which they talk about in the docuseries. He did The Hockey Nomad and Finding the Secret Path. This docuseries features the Tragically Hip, which is the late, great Gord Downie, Rob Baker, John Fay, Paul Langlois, and Gord Sinclair. It also features Will Arnett, Dan Aykroyd, Jay Baruchel, Sarah Harmer, Geddy Lee from Rush, George Stroumboulopoulos from Much Music, and the Prime Minister of Canada, for now, Justin Trudeau, as many other celebrities and family members and management. So, okay, Scott, I'll kick it back over to you.
Yeah, it is, especially growing up Canadian, it is a lot of hoo-hoo, especially with George and Devin from Much Music. But there's such a sweet intercut of all CBC interviews, Much Music interviews, even George's show he had for a while that was kind of I guess you could say almost like real talk with or real time with
Bill
oh my
Maher?
God, it's kind of like that, where it was political docu, and then you had the guest. But yeah, there's so much watching this. I don't know about you, but for me, watching this, and then it's just a flood of
Nostalgia?
I don't want to say it's nostalgia, but it's just a flood of like hip songs. It brings back fucking good memories. It's not you're just living in the past, but you can I've been enthralled with fucking my Apple Music, fucking just playing the fucking hip over and over again now. Because of it, and it's my wife may leave me because she never was a hip fan, so I'm obviously you're not Canadian, but yeah, it's just so much fucking fun, and so especially now being mid 20 to 50 range that I can play. it actually listening to these lyrics now, right? Because to me, Fully Completely is my hip album, right? That's the one I identify the most with and love the most. But there isn't a hip album that's fucking bad, which that's the thing. Watching this, and you're going through each album technically, and just they start playing the samples of the songs and shit, and you're like, fuck, this one's good. Yeah, this one's good too, right? It's just, yeah, I just want to say it's just so fucking well done, and having the inside baseball of the band, speaking on what was going on at the time, and how their process worked. Even the fact that you find out, and I don't know if this was basic knowledge or not, but the how they split the royalties. Sure, Gord was I want to my contribute is I want to only sing my own lyrics, but the royalties of that song got split 4 ways. It was never like
5 ways.
songwriter
There's five members of the band.
but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Basically, he didn't just get the songwriting stuff all to himself. He was like, a Tragically Hip song is not a Tragically Hip song until everybody puts their stamp on it, from the drummer to the guitarist to like him. You know what I mean? Like, so it was, like that is one of the reasons that band probably stayed together. And I mean, they talk about it in the docuseries as well, that like that, because you didn't get the financial issues. And Gord even talks about it. They're doing an interview with him on Much Music, which was our MTV up here in Canada. And he's just like, I can't be driving a Rolls Royce. And he points to his guitarist and says like, and he's riding a 10-speed bike. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not cool, right?
Yeah. And like even the bit of information with like Tower Records, right? Like that was fucking amazing, right? Knowing that, you know, they approached them to like just play on
to
the
do
rooftop.
A Beatles style playing on the roof show, when then they were going to basically give that album front and center in every Tower Records around the world. And the band said, nah, that's too fucking corporate, because we're Sam the Record Man people here in, you know, because Sam the Record Man's a big Canadian chain, or was big Canadian chain.
Yeah, and they're just like, you know, well, and then Sam the Record Man had that, and then they like kind of bring that too, where like they have their own like magazine or whatever, and they're just bashing the hip without even realizing that
the hip is basically giving them a fucking reach around.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just like the little tidbits and like going down like the history of this band is just it was just awe-inspiring, right? And kind of sad too, because like me personally, I never had the opportunity to actually go watch them live, and I really wanted to, especially Canada Day, like because that was like hip Canada Day concert, right? Like I don't know how many they did in a year, like in a row, but that was always the thing. Like, okay, I want to go watch the hip on Canada Day, but never actually had that opportunity to do it.
So, okay, on that topic, this is a great segue. So I've had Tragically Hip tickets at least twice, and I did not see the band, including being at a Tragically Hip, at a music festival Tragically Hip was playing at, and not seeing them play. So I was at a music festival in Victoria, British Columbia in like probably like late 2000s. You can Google it. It's called Rock the Shores. It was like them, Great Bay, or Current Swell, Sam Roberts. And so Current Swell, Sam Roberts playing. While Sam Roberts is playing, there's a lightning storm, right? And we actually don't get a lot of those in Victoria just because of the weird weather patterns they get out there. And so Sam Roberts plays half his set. He leaves the stage. So I'm at this thing. There's like, I don't know how many thousands of people. I say to my buddy, I'm like, yo, we got to get the fuck out of here before this turns into a riot, because people are going to be pissed they don't get to see the Tragically Hip. So, of course, you know, discretion's the better part of valor. We leave the show. We're at a house party later, and people show up and they're like, yo, were you guys at Rock the Shores? I was like, yeah, we left. Did you see the Tragically Hip play? And we're like, no. People start pulling out their phones, and you got the Tragically Hip playing and a fucking lightning storm. They still went on the stage. A lightning storm over top of them. Like, God gave, like, whatever God you believe in, if you believe in one, basically said, fuck you, Chris. You're going to miss the greatest Tragically Hip show. And I mean, until they did their final tour ever, because it was like thunder, lightning, and then them rocking out underneath the fucking lightning in a place that never gets fucking lightning storms. So yeah, fuck Chris. And then I also missed out when they were playing at Squamish Music Festival because of girlfriend stuff. So yeah, Chris also got to never see the Tragically Hip. And they were playing locally at the Kitchener Auditorium. This is just before Gord gave release that he was getting sick and he was probably going to die. And tickets were like normal price, you know, $20 to go see the Tragically Hip at the Kitchener Auditorium. And then Gord Downie, the lead singer, is like, yeah, I got terminal brain cancer. We're going to do one more tour in backing up our album. Tickets go through the roof. The Prime Minister's going to the fucking final concert. And here we are. And yeah, Gord Downie, the lead singer of the Tragically Hip, died on October 17th, 2017. So here's a question from our producer who said, if you're not Canadian and you're not a Tragically Hip fan, like, why would you watch this documentary? Should you watch this documentary, Scott?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like the aura of, hip in, let's say, if the question is about the States, like they reference it, and I believe that narrative that they weren't popular in the States seems like, through this documentary, seems to be kind of demystified, because yeah, you know they weren't as big in the States as they were in Canada, but they were popular enough where they even reference, like, any club that a band wanted, like, to solidify themselves in the States would play, the Hip played. Yeah, there weren't like fucking probably arena tours in the States, but they were still, popular enough there. Like, they got to fucking, like, what do they say? They played with fucking the Rolling Stones, right?
Yeah,
And they
and
played
Robert
with,
Plant and Jimmy Page from fucking Led Zeppelin. So
yeah, like, and that's the thing. Like, I think it, like, the one thing that they did when they had the, no roadside attraction tour, and then they brought in,
Midnight Oil.
yeah, and they're like, we had no fucking idea who these guys are, and then you're watching this, like, behind the scenes where, Midnight Oil is rocking out, they're on the stage watching, and then they go back in their dressing room and they're like having fucking panic attacks, like, why the fuck would we headline this? And then they come out and just fucking
Blow the roof
blow,
off of the place.
yeah, and then just fucking made Midnight Oil a believer, right? Like,
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
I think their credentials and their accolades kind of speak for themselves. Like, it's referenced, like, how big they were in Europe. So I think just because you're not Canadian doesn't mean you're not going to enjoy this. I think you'll probably enjoy it more. And if you weren't a fan from any of these countries and you watch this documentary, I think it's going to I think, and I hope that their record sales and their downloads and their streams just after September 20th just has a huge fucking renaissance, that, you have another hip explosion where people are just fucking in love with the hip again, because it's coming up to their 40th anniversary, right? So I think this is the perfect time to, like, fucking go back on the hip.
Yeah, I think so. First off, if you like well-made documentaries, whether music or otherwise, this is a great one. Like, again, it's got a great story arc. I'm unfortunately, because of the death of Gord Downie and what the band had to do or decides to do after that, that's kind of the final of the four. The first episode is basically the creation of the band. Like, these guys were in like grade 11 and stuff when they first started jamming with each other and even other bands before those, some members from two different bands basically become the Hip. Then you've got the second episode, which is really like the big albums of the 90s, like Road Apples and Up to Here, and I'm even Fully Completely might be in there. And then you get into the third one, which is kind of like, where do we go from here? The trouble in the band, and that's where you first hear about Gord's diagnosis. And then obviously, again, the fourth is like the final chapter. And so again, if you just like documentaries, this is going to be a great documentary. If you like music documentaries, you get to see, like you said, all this behind, because you've got footage that's like never been seen before, because it's their personal, camera footage, interviews. Mike has done a really great job of like going through the fucking archives of the Hip, from Much Music to other news broadcasts and stuff like that, like even the local stuff out of Kingston, and pulling this stuff all together. So you really get the dissection of a band, but not in a clinical way, in like this really holistic kind of spiritual mind body, collective. And again, so if you like music documentaries, you don't even know but I would argue you cannot watch this documentary if you've never heard of the Tragically Hip. If you watch this docuseries, you are going to want to know the Tragically Hip. Like, I was not a big Tragically Hip fan growing up. I almost feel like because they were so big, especially in the little Southern Ontario, like cities and towns and stuff that like I grew up in and Scott grew up in, there was almost like, for me, it was like I pushed back against the hegemony. I was like, fuck that. These guys are like, everybody listens to fucking Tragically Hip. I'm way too cool for school. I'm not going to listen to Tragically Hip. I mean, you couldn't not hear the Tragically Hip. My parents listened to the Tragically Hip. My friends were listening to the Tragically Hip. And so even without being like some super fan, this music is the soundtrack to massive parts of my life. Like I hear certain songs and I know, like being up at my cottage, hanging out with like the older kids at parties and stuff like that. And all the like back, the broken in, 50 mission cap. Like I worked it in to look like that. Like those baseball caps that were kind of purposely broken in. Like this is the soundtrack of your life here in Canada. You know what I mean? Especially if you're a certain age group. Like I'd say 40 to maybe 55, somewhere in there. But again, if you're older, you were listening to it too. Like they were just a massive, massive band. And even after Gord died, like streaming and purchases of their albums went through the roof again. So I agree with Scott that I'm hoping that this docu-series does what I think it's going to do. It's going to be huge in Canada, and it's going to drive their album sales and stuff like that again. I really just can't say enough about this. It is such a well done piece of cinema, really. Like, I don't know what else you could ask for from a music documentary that this doesn't have, because as you said, Scott, it's got all the feels. It's got all the feels.
Yeah, and I think the way this is done and the narrative is done, especially when it is Gord's brother, right? It doesn't shine everybody with like the basking like everybody was perfect. Like everybody's flaws, even Gord's flaws, were addressed here, right? Like I do think that the fact that he was a Boston Bruins fan might have knocked him down in terms of Canada. Like sure, it's original six, but come on, man. Like the minute Ottawa Senators got a team, you should have gone to Ottawa. Like if you didn't, and especially since living in Toronto, like for a while, you should have gone Leafs. But I digress in terms of that.
It's not punk rock to fucking pick an American original six team, man. Come on.
But yeah, like I think, but also like there was something that was said in this documentary, like especially in the last episode, and I think it was I think it was George that said it, or it was I'm having a brain fart, the guy from Kids in the Hall.
Oh yeah. That's the other thing. There's one of the main guys from Kids Hall. It also eludes me. He worked with them a lot on some projects, including a music video for
Music at Work.
Music at Work. Yes.
Yeah, Men at Work. But yeah, they were saying like on that final tour, like every night, like having that mental drain, I think this band had on that final tour, where every night, he's saying goodbye to the audience, and technically, every night he's saying goodbye to this band, right? Until you get to that final concert in Kingston. Now, did you watch it on, I think it was CBC that broadcast it?
Oh yeah, of course, man. I mean, bars were playing it. I mean, our producer tried to go see it at a bar, and that didn't really work out because people were fucking being annoying. So he ended up going home and fucking setting up his big stereo system and watching it that way. So like everybody, I bet you most Canadians were watching or participating in that event.
Yeah, it was like, what did they say? It was the second most or most watched thing in Canada. It was like one or two, right?
Yeah.
But and that just goes to show like how much this band, who sang about Canadian stories but never made it like it was never
nationalistic. Yeah,
it was just like, this is our history, we should know our history. And I think it was Jay
Baruchel, or however you say his
Baruchel, who addressed it more there. And you think about it, there really isn't another nation whose whole entertainment and culture is based off of their neighbors. Like we engulf and consume more American content than probably anybody else, right? Like even our box office is based off America. Like name the last Canadian movie that like blew up the fucking cinemas.
Porky's. Ginger Snaps. I don't know. One of those.
Yeah. Like how long ago it was, right? Look how long.
Yeah, man. Again, like I said, there are better podcasts to do about the Tragically Hip, music and stuff like that. Go listen to fucking Alan Cross. All these people, all of these places will do it better than us. All I have to say is this: when this thing comes out on the 20th of September, again, I'm sure Prime has some type of like free version you can watch for a couple days or whatever. You're gonna want to watch this thing. If you're in Canada, if you love the hip, if you love music, if you love documentaries, watch it. If you were lucky enough to see it at TIFF, congratulations. I hope you enjoyed yourself. It is going to be hitting some other Canadian film festivals, including the Atlantic International Film Festival, the Vancouver International Film Festival, and the Calgary International Film Festival. Like I said, it's like 4 hours of your life, and but then you'll be ahead by a century.
And that is our wrap for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. If you want to get a hold of us, reach us at the www.howdyoulikethatmovie.com. I also like the fact that they reference like road apples and what that actually fucking means, and the American CEO didn't even realize it, and they're like, yeah, we like that apple, and like literally it means horseshit.
Yeah, the album's called Horseshit, frozen horseshit.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing. That's Canada. We're even nice about making people feel stupid. Like, okay.
Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.